Hello, everyone. I'm Professor Geek. Welcome back to the channel, and welcome to another Star Wars EU book study. Of course, tonight we are covering Dark Empire Part 2. Just checking and making sure everything's going on there. Should probably put my headphones on if I'm going to hear my co-host here. But before I bring my co-host on, just want to explain why we're doing this Saturday night instead of Friday night as usual. My daughter was sick last night, and had slept too well, and there was stuff going on. She needs to be kind of close to bedtime if I'm going to do a stream with her here, because she can be a little bit of a handful and whatnot. So just didn't work out last night. But we're doing these Dark Empire studies very um, differently than we do the normal book studies. Like, as you know, if you tuned into the first Dark Empire 1 study last week, we're not really going through and talking about each event in the narrative. We're not really, because it's a graphic novel or radio drama if you listen to the radio drama, and it's a little bit different than really digging into the prose and the it's just slightly different. So we're probably not going to spend no more than a half hour, maybe if that, just talking about part 2 here, the second installment. It is a trilogy. A lot of people don't know that, just a casual sort of fan, that Dark Empire was a trilogy. There was a part 2, a part 3, and so forth. So without further ado, let me go ahead and welcome my co-host. It says Big Al, but don't believe it. This is Mr. Doth Sutter.
I forgot. Excuse me. I know up to Dark Side Mischief, and I just forgot to put my name.
Sorry, I had to echo there for a second. I heard you go, I forgot twice because of the YouTube channel there. But how are you doing?
I am doing all right. Just relaxing here. It's a busy night for me, and this is just the start of it.
Yeah, it's a change in the schedule because both of us have streams, because I had to go stream at 9:30, which I'm still doing, and then you do a rewatch at 10, right?
Yes. On someone else's channel. There we go.
The Netters Network thing? Or
yeah, Netters Network. We're watching The Cube.
The Cube? I don't know that one.
It's a kind of a psychological horror.
Okay.
And then next week I'm doing The Rocketeer.
Rocketeer, that's a good one. Yeah. By I'm blanking on the director's name, but the same guy who did Captain America: The First Avenger really excels in those movies of that time period. But he's a great director. He's done some other Joe what's his name? Joe
Johnson?
Joe Juster or something like that. I forget. I think it's Joe something. I don't know. I could look over at my image, but anyway, we're here to talk about Star Wars. For those who read the actual graphic novel here, last time I mentioned the foreword in part 1 by Kevin J. Anderson. I think it was by Kevin J. Anderson, talking about how they came together and put this in continuity with the rest of the EU. And I should probably lead with that, just in case. I can't imagine anybody that would join us tonight and not have watched part 1, but just in case, or just to remind some people. Basically, my take, and I think it was Al's take, to the extent of his knowledge of the EU. Dark Empire is kind of a real head scratcher, and if you just look at it as its own tale, as it was originally written by Tom Veitch, it's kind of like, what are you thinking? That is not where you take Star Wars. It just is. There's some very lazy writing choices, story content wise and stuff.
But I thought people didn't get upset till Disney got a hold of it. Oh, sorry.
Well, it's very different. You can't.
I'm just kidding.
The level of poison, if you want to say, if I may be so bold as to call it that, trying to, like, what if Luke fell? What did you do? Is still nothing compared to what Disney did, because it's enough salvageable stuff there to get to the rest of my point, which is that the way the EU's come around this and sort of built around it. Okay, I kind of see this in part of Luke's progression. It wasn't just I fell to the dark side because I love dark side. He was trying to learn about his enemy to be able to better fight his enemy, to better understand how his father fell and whatnot. And
it's I forget what they're called in, like, the FBI, when they have to get into the mindset of a serial killer.
Oh, a profiler?
Profiler.
Yeah.
It's like he was profiling the dark side.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. But still, we're not giving it a pass by any means. We're just saying that the EU tasked with the job of how do we put this in continuity with the Thrawn trilogy and everything that comes after it. And Kevin J. Anderson deserves props for that because he was a big part of that, going into the Jedi Academy trilogy after that and whatnot. So yeah, that was our basic gist of the first one. We did talk about some of the good things, some of the bad things. Now,
yeah, like why didn't Han keep the lightning gun?
yeah, we'll talk about some of these weapons and stuff like that and things that tonight with part 2. Now, one thing, Al, that you don't know because you just listened to the radio drama, and the radio drama is really, again, very well done. I've got the links there in the description.
I did also, to refresh my memory a little bit tonight, read the Wikipedia entry on Dark Empire 2 just to kind of refresh my story take. Yeah. I noticed there were a few differences.
There are. That's one of the things I'm going to open with is that in the actual graphic novel, we open with the Grand Executor Cedrus coming to what's the planet scene that he comes? The weapon planet.
Boss. Something Sana.
Let me get to the. I've got all these names. Balmorra. I should know that. I'm on Balmorra and playing in Star Wars: The Old Republic right now in the MMO. But yeah, it's it opens with that scene, and it opens with by the time you see Luke, he's already got this guy Cam Salusar, who's a dark Jedi that he had redeemed. I think this shows again how little Tom Veitch really understands, or maybe even wanted to write the character of Luke. He seems much more at home writing Han. He does a good job writing Han and Leia and all that kind of stuff. And not every writer gets aspirational heroes. Not every writer is really able to do them well. Go ahead.
Because the one thing I was thinking is the way Cam Salazar was presented in acting. Was
wonderfully.
He was a morphing of Han and Luke.
Oh, you mean in the voice acting of it? Yeah.
No. I'm talking the way the character was like his vocal, like he was a bit flippant. He was a little more.
I could see that he's somewhere in between on the spectrum.
Yeah. He's kind of little. He's not as serious. Luke is. If you defeat me, I will just become more powerful. Yeah. And he's like, well, let's just take these bunks down.
Yeah. Kind of guy. And Luke has to remind him, hey, mind the vengeance and whatnot.
Watch it. So it was kind of like because you were mentioning that Veitch would like to write Han more than Luke. That's why I thought. Cam Salazar was kind of that Jedi bad boy.
Yeah.
That he would have preferred to write.
That's an interesting point, and I think you're probably onto something there. Now it works for Cam Salusar because in the graphic novel, Luke comes back to the base there. Leia is still hasn't given birth to the child that they'll name Anakin Solo. She was pregnant with him in part 1. She's still pregnant with him part 2. So it's not like a long stretch of time. But by the time that Luke comes back in the graphic novel, he has Cam Salusar with him, and he says, "Oh yeah, he's a dark Jedi that I converted, to the light side. We're trying to build back the Jedi Order and everything." In the radio drama, though, you actually get the scene. And I really want to hats off to the people who adapted it to the radio drama because it's so important to have that scene, especially in this continuity after having Luke in Dark Empire 1 with all the nonsense of, working for Emperor and all that kind of stuff, being, mind, messed up in the mind and all that kind of stuff. It's so great to have really true blue aspirational Luke here. In the way he talks to Cam, it's like, no, I'm not going to kill you. I give you back the power that's already yours. Embrace the light side of the Force and whatnot. And we really get to see aspirational Luke, shine. And whoever did the adaptation to the radio drama really put that in the scene form for us, which I think is very important. It also makes us have a little bit more of a foundation with Cam Salusar. We kind of root for him a little bit more, other than just sort of introducing him.
Yeah, I didn't know. Yeah, I didn't know that wasn't in the thing. That seemed to be a very important fact to know that how Luke did that.
Yeah,
and why it wasn't in there would have made no sense.
And there were things that the radio drama added. I didn't mention it as much. I see Andre Hernandez pointing out in part 1, like, Luke actually finding the holocron. That was in the radio drama in part 1 that wasn't necessarily in the graphic novel. So the writers, again, that's just an example of how the EU came around this story and kind of really fixed it in a lot of ways. The radio dramas go a long way with that. If you could only do one, listen to the radio dramas or read the comics, I'd say listen to the radio dramas in a heartbeat. I know proponents of the art here, of Cam Kennedy's art, might really be aghast at me saying that, but the story-wise, it's just better in the radio dramas, I think. But Cam Salusar is a cool character. There are some really cool characters introduced in part 2 here. Cam Salusar, and we're just sticking to the events of part 2. We'll cover part 3 next week. But Cam Salusar, as Al mentioned, I like the way you describe him. He's sort of in between, on the spectrum between Luke and Han, but he was a apprentice, a Padawan to his father, who was a Jedi before he, was twisted and fell into the dark side and became one of the Emperor's dark Jedi or whatever. We do meet some other characters, though, in this book. And a lot of people, to some degree, and the way this is sometimes done, I think this criticism has merit. But I've heard this criticism before. Look, Yoda and Obi-Wan talk about how Luke is their last hope. You can't have all these other Jedi surviving Order 66. I don't think that's really a valid criticism if it's done this way, in which there were some Jedi who had fallen, or Jedi who just said, screw the Force, I'm done with this thing anymore. I'm just trying to hide out to survive. And for example, in this, we have Vima, the old lady that we met in part 1. Remember I said, don't get tripped up by Vima. She's not Vima Sunrider, Nomi Sunrider's daughter. But we learn in part 2 that she is the last of their line. She is the last of the Sunrider line. So that's a pretty cool thing. And Tom Veitch did go on, really props to him for his work on Tales of the Jedi. That was where he really shines in Star Wars. So he's planting a lot of seeds in there. So we have Vima, this old woman who cut herself off, from the world, hiding in the sewers of Nar Shaddaa. I mean, really just hiding, where no one can see her. You've got Yoda, of course, on Dagobah, trying to monitor things from afar and see what he can do about molding a hope, one day. And we have, Cam Salusar. We also have a character by the name of Brand. What did you think of this character, Al? I figured you'd like him.
I liked him, and I sent you that little picture comparison because he reminded me in the artwork of the beat up little flying robot in Black Hole. But he'd seen better days.
Yeah, poor guy. Trying to find a good image here to show.
But then he seemed to be at a good place because he could survive in space. Sounds like he doesn't need like food or anything.
Yeah.
He's good to go. He's a tough little guy now. But yes, he did have some issues with Darth Vader that kind of like really messed him up, and then I forget exactly.
So he was being pursued. He was one of the Jedi being pursued. And on Nar Shaddaa, there is this, just to kind of quickly put this in there. There's this cloud-like thing, this technology or energy cloud or whatever, that if you're driven into it, it kind of kills all your systems, the spaceship systems, whatnot. You can't, and there's no getting out of it. There's no surviving, or coming back from it through it. So he went through this thing. Darth Vader's pursuing him. There's some things, his ship crashes. His body just really is put through the paces. And he ends up sort of like a MODOK looking character.
Yeah.
I'll show you the image here for those watching at home. There he is. So he's sort of a cyborg. But the people who have stumbled through this cloud have sort of made a living for themselves. They don't have a lot of technology, so it's kind of like a steampunk Star Wars. They have like steam powered starships, like brass and all this kind of stuff. And he's sort of like this steampunk cyborg. Really kind of a cool character, but he was a Jedi and he retains his Jedi abilities.
Does he float or does he roll?
I think he floats. That's the impression I got. But
that is cool.
Yeah, he's a cool character, and they retrofit or they fit the Millennium Falcon, with some of their gear too, and they are able to make it through the cloud again. And he comes with them.
And you knew who he was Padawan to.
Mm. Go ahead and say that.
Yaddle.
Yeah. Excuse me. All those burps from the soda. Yeah, Yaddle, who you don't know, was a female of Yoda's race who was cut from the sequels, but she was originally in there. And you can find images of her online and some of the character designs and whatnot. So she one of the Jedi council, as well. So yeah, cool character. There are others of Yoda's race in the Old Republic. You got Master Vandar in Knights of the Old Republic, Master Oteg in Star Wars: The Old Republic, the MMO. So there are other members of his race that pop up here and there in the EU even. So, so it's an interesting, cadre. You've got this group of Jedi Knights who, a few of them being redeemed are being found. Brand Vima comes back, even though she's quite old, and she's got a lot of healing. She is able. We see her do some really cool healing in this.
Yeah, she has some special powers that way.
Yeah,
and then of course one of the ones that really got me was what Treebeard or whatever.
Yeah,
I forget what it is.
Master Bodo Vas.
Bodo Vas. Yeah,
he is the Jedi who is in the holocron that we found in Part 1. He's the Jedi that recorded it, and it was the Jedi whose conscious or avatar, has been speaking to them. We find Cam Salusar, and the holocron tells Cam and Luke to go to this planet. And again, I'm sorry, tonight I'm blanking on all the planet names. Which one is it? Where do they find Jim?
Okay, it's really good. The Asana is the
Asana are the group people they find there. Balmora is the weapon planet. Ossus.
Okay.
Again, another Star Wars planet that we know of from games and whatnot.
It seems like they just throw a bunch of Scrabble squares and comes up with weird names.
I've got the Star Wars Atlas, which is a great, wonderful resource. And these are planets that, even though they can seem kind of random, they're ones that are mentioned in the movies or show up a lot over and over. So there is sort of a set system. Like, these are the planets of the Star Wars EU. Mm-hmm. And the Atlas is a recommended reading. But yeah, Bodo Vas is sort of this big tree-like character. They think he's a tree at first. And they go to this planet looking for more Jedi or a hope. They find this big tree-like thing. This young woman and this young man, her brother, are tied to it, looking like they're to be sacrificed or something like that. Luke and Cam
Jem and
save
Rafe,
them.
right?
What's that?
Jem and Rafe.
Yeah, Jem and Rafe. And Jem agrees. There's the Empire finds them there. These Grand Executors, who are basically the Empire's, dark Jedi. The Emperor's back, of course. He did find one clone to get in, which is another, like, come on, man. You can't have any bad guy but the Emperor, but he has these Grand Executors doing his will. Now, Jem, this young woman, this member of this race called the Asana, they are Force sensitive. They're not Jedi. They haven't been able to wield the Force on that Jedi level, but Luke senses the Force within them. And he offers them, look, I'm trying to rebuild the Jedi Knights. And Jem, the girl, agrees to go with him. And Luke is training her, on the ship with her, he and Cam. And then, of course, there's this little bit of a romance that starts to bud between Luke and Jem. It's not incredibly well.
Yeah. It was definitely a George Lucas-esque type of a romance.
Yeah. It's not really well developed. It's a graphic novel, not a novel. That's part of it. But yeah, it's a little bit like,
I'm a boy, you're a girl. We both use the Force. Hey.
Yeah. Hey, why not? We both hate sand. But tragically, it doesn't end well for Jem. So don't worry. She obviously doesn't complicate things between Luke and Mara.
Tatooine Days and Jedi Knights. Now on the Hallmark Channel.
That's awesome. Someone should write that. Like Star Wars, the Hallmark movie, Tatooine Days and Jedi Knights. That's funny. Yeah, so Jem doesn't survive. There is an attack on Luke's life. which is pretty vicious. They use these little assassin droid things that are like poisoning him with dark side energy and whatnot. But this is where Vima comes in, the older lady.
They're like little bug looking things.
Yeah, it's pretty wicked. The image too. I'll try and find it to show.
And I would be like freaking out if I see these things. It looks like whatever.
Well, he's asleep, but too.
Oh yeah, I'm like, someone doesn't know these things are floating around.
Look at that. Those are nasty. Now that brings us to the topic of technology here. And I know we're flying through this, but again, ideally you've read the story, you know the story. And I will look at some of the comments people made or ideas you guys have on it before we do wrap up later. But there is a lot of technology introduced. There's a criticism about Star Wars, which I think on the one hand is perfectly valid. I think on the other hand, though, you got to give it some slack. But there's the criticism of like, oh my gosh, does every story need to have some planetary destruction weapon? We got the Death Star, fine. They wanted to rebuild the Death Star, fine. But then you've got, in Dark Empire 1, for example, you got the World Devastators. And it doesn't really, like, the World Devastators take a lot more time and energy and take a lot more time than the Death Star did. So you think, well, wouldn't he have been better off just to rebuild the Death Star? But of course, he's just rebuilding the Empire. He's not going to have the resources he had at one point. So that makes sense. But in this book, they go from the World Devastators to the Space Cannon, which is a little funny sounding.
The Galaxy Gun.
Yeah, the Galaxy Gun. That's what it's called. Yeah. Which apparently can fire a shot through space from whatever planet it's on to go decimate a planet.
You would think, okay, like the original Death Star, when you're in control of this empire and your resources are basically endless, it makes sense to it's like we don't need to build a whole thing, just build the gun, just build wherever it fires, and let's have a Star Destroyer just kind of point it. And like just let it do its thing, or just put it on a Star Destroyer.
Yeah,
but because they always go to this, just like in the episode 8, 6, 7. Sorry, that thing. They had another gun on that. The First Order did.
Well, even Knights of the Old Republic harken back to the Starforge of the Rakatan Empire, which is another sort of world destroyer. Now, so on the one hand, you can think, okay, this is lazy. On the other hand, if you are running the Empire, you want to conquer and rule, and your main tool to do that has to be fear. So putting boots on the ground and conquering and trying to run up each, you're dealing with a galaxy of planets. That's very time consuming. You would obviously look for technology that would allow you to wield terror on a planetary level. So it makes sense that that's the thing you would go for. But I think sometimes, again, when you're trying to look at this all in one continuity, it can get a little crazy. It can get a little, hey, maybe we should ease back on that a bit,
Yeah,
and the EU eventually does.
Well, just like you look at the original, A New Hope. We blow up Alderaan to just prove a point.
Yeah,
maybe not the best planet to do that.
Yeah,
with. I mean, blow up was it's like show what you can do, but you don't need to like
take away all those resources that you can.
Yeah, use. This nice little planet. It's got resources and everything, and. I think just a poor choice. Oh, it's a poor choice.
Yeah. So, but that's the nature of it, and I think again, there's an argument to be made for it, but I think it could be done a little more subtly than it is done sometimes. Anyway, whatever. There is the other technology, like you mentioned, the light gun. They fit the Millennium Falcon with this special gun from the steampunk era kind of technology, the light gun they call it. And
lightning gun.
And Boba Fett doesn't know what to expect of this, and his sensors read that the Millennium Falcon is without weapons, or he's not firing, so it seems like everything's fine. He's like, goodbye, Solo. It's been fun.
Let's talk Boba Fett here. Hit my rocket pack once, shame on me, or shame on you. Hit it twice, shame on me. Come on, I mean. He gets thwarted by the exact same thing as Rocket Pack.
This is a problem with Boba Fett writers too, and I think Tom Veitch made this mistake with Boba Fett in this story. You can't maintain that Boba Fett is the most badass bounty hunter ever, always gets his prey. Hey, Boba Fett showed up. It's really Han Solo's in some serious danger right now. You can't maintain that tension if Han has slipped his grasp 1,000 different times by now. He's not even a threat.
You know who he is in this story?
Who's that?
He's Team Rocket from Pokemon. They show up, they think they're, going to do all this stuff, and it ends up blowing up in their face. Mm-hmm. And, nothing good comes of it.
Yeah. It was interesting, the little bit of backstory that Veach tried to give him when he's dealing with the executors from the Empire. They're trying to hire him, and they say, "We're not paying you. We know your history. We know you used to be a stormtrooper, but you betrayed and shot your commanding officer or whatnot." Now this is he's got a little bit different of a backstory. He's still, they fold in the clone thing and everything in the EU, but it's an interesting backstory that we'll go through and put into that. But again, this is it's fun to see the beginnings of trying to flesh out a backstory for Boba Fett in the EU long before we ever had the prequels. So it's interesting. I don't know if you caught it in the radio drama, but there's a time or two, because you get on me for always doing this, and I always mispronounce this when I'm just talking quickly. Quite often I'll say Bubba Fett instead of Boba Fett.
Yeah, Boba Fett.
But I don't know if you caught Han said that a couple of times in radio drama. Yeah, but Bubba Fett. I'm like, see, it's not just me that says that.
And that's his brother from the southern part of Geonosis.
Yeah, Bubba
Fett. Bubba Fett.
Yeah, it's funny. But all in all, I'd say Dark Empire 2 is a lot better than Dark Empire 1 in terms of story-wise, satisfaction-wise. By the end, we do have the birth of Leia's son. Anakin Solo's born. He's given the name Anakin. The Jedi Knights are seemingly on the rise. On one hand, it does seem like there's some beats that Veach is taking from the original trilogy. It's like, okay, it's our Empire Strikes Back, so we got to have this. We got to have this. But we don't end with desolation, that we did at the end of Empire Strikes Back. We do have it does seem like the rebel base is destroyed, but apparently most of them were able to evacuate. They're on New Alderaan, I believe.
Yeah, that's be a scary name for a planet to be on.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like I'm going to go on Titanic too.
Yeah, exactly. But Titanic too.
Yeah, we only touched on Balmorra a little bit, the planet that builds all the weapons. I think that's the one, right? Mm-hmm. I really like the guy who's in charge of Balmorra.
Governor Beltane, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, oh, they're throwing SD9s at us. Launch the SD10s.
Yeah. It's a cool opening scene. It really is. So Balmorra is the planet that has been supplying the Empire with all of their weapons. But Balmorra, Governor Beltane of Balmorra, maintains a certain level of independence from the Empire. He's not just their man because he's got all these weapons, and they can't really do so much about it because he's supplying them weapons. Well, they find out that he's been supplying the Alliance a little bit on the side too, just trying to make money. Mm-hmm. So Executor Cedric comes in trying to flex, and we're taking you out. And, he sends all of these most up-to-date weaponry to go decimate the planet. And as you said, Beltane just says, release the latest version of that, which takes that out. We do find out about some cool things there, though. The Dark Troopers.
Yeah. Well, and then also Palpatine has these Rancors on steroids.
Yeah. Them too. Yeah. But first we find out about not Dark. Is it called Dark Troopers? The the TIE fighters that are tied in.
Oh yeah. That's creepy.
To a pilot's brain. So like a dead TIE fighter pilot, they save his brain and work it into this. So it's like this big sort of cyborg like. It's not really hinted at how sentient it is, but it's got the reflexes of a real TIE fighter's brain at the center of this contraption, and that's able to do so much more damage.
It's like a Dalek.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, like the Doctor Who thing, definitely. Then of course, Beltane enters these Viper droids that he has, which have molecular shielding, which makes them all the more terrifying. And I do like the design of the Viper droids because they're almost like if a Rancor was a droid. It's kind of a cool concept. Try to find it here. Yeah, let me go back. And before we even get to the actual Rancors, but yeah, there's the Viper droid. It's almost like a Rancor droid character or something. So some pretty cool ideas and visuals of technology and whatnot. And we'll see some of it come back later. Sala comes back too, just to mention a character we forgot. Of course, Luke's ex-girlfriend, Leia gives Sala the same sort of speech that she gave Han. You need to pick a side. You can't just be a scavenger or a renegade for the rest of your life. She's like, whatever, I'll look out for my own skin. And of course, she ends up coming back with a lot of the other smugglers and whatnot to help the alliance. So
pretty much saved the day.
Yeah.
And imagine there was that really cool moment where Luke and when they were returning to Pinnacle Base, when the Emperor had launched the Galaxy Gun, and saw it like basically he thought everybody was dead, and then thankfully you find out no, they all got away.
Yeah,
thanks.
You got away to a different planet. Yeah, thanks to Sala and the smugglers. Yeah. So I mean, like I said, a lot of problems with it still. I'm not recommending this as super quality story, but for anybody who does want to follow the EU and all the wonderful stories we have in it, this was fun. The characters are the characters. Luke is Luke. This is kind of your reward for getting through Dark Empire 1, and it's the birth of Anakin Solo, so it's a momentous event in the EU. If you're interested in the EU, then I definitely recommend reading it. We have some great characters introduced. By the end of it, it's a fun place to be, where this budding start to the Jedi Knights. Again, just keeping it to continuity here. We're not going to say anything that happens in Part 3 yet until next week. But you've got Vima, Brand, Cam, Luke, Leia, Janna, Jason, and Anakin. Now, so we've got a good core start and some new generations coming up. So it's interesting to see how it's all going to turn out.
You got to give it to Leia being that active, that pregnant.
Leia's a boss, man. I mean, in Thrawn trilogy, pregnant as she was, and going around, being the hero of diplomacy with the Nogri and so forth, and in this one, like doing Jedi stuff, pregnant. I mean, that's to any woke person or ideologue who's like, yeah, the women shouldn't have to be pregnant. They need to be meh. Go take the original EU Leia. That just should silence anybody who says a mother can't be heroic. I mean, goodness. Leia's she's a boss, like I said. It's awesome. I wanted to, before we wrap up, I wanted to go through and just kind of take a look at some of the comments and stuff. Did you have any thoughts you wanted to get to before I mentioned some of the comments and looking at people had to say?
No, just Part 2. Just nice improvement. Felt a lot better to write. I didn't have any major problems.
Yeah.
Luke's still a little bit weird in this one, but he's definitely a little bit more on track.
I liked him in the radio drama. I didn't think he was so weird. He's trying to get things together, trying to get the new knights together. The gem thing was a little weird.
Yeah, that just I'm like, really?
Somebody I think it's Andre Hernandez said, where is it?
Is that the one? Did Luke have a cursed love life?
Luke's got a cursed love life. What are my thoughts? He does kind of have a cursed love life in a lot of the EU. If you look at the continuity up until he meets Mara, there's a love interest in the Truce of Bakura, which is the story that takes place right after the Moon of Endor, the Return of Jedi. There's a little bit of a love interest there. There's a couple different love interests he has. And, it's kind of cool. A character, coming from Tatooine, never really having any kind of romantic relationship that at least we're told of, very innocent, going through all this, strict Jedi training. I think it's good that he has some experience, of the heart before he settles down with Mara. But yeah, obviously they're ill-fated because they don't last until Mara and he actually marries and has a family. But I do want to, just by way of recognizing people too, I've said Andre Hernandez, Darth Enigma has been here joining us. Of course, my dear sound engraver, Ghost Planet Max, Samuel Proctor popped in and said he didn't do the reading. But Fizzochio Corner, what exactly is Dark Empire? Well, I guess you probably figured it out by now because that was a comment to begin with. But as a recap, a comic book trilogy that was greenlit by Dark Horse at the same time that the book company greenlit the Thrawn trilogy. And for just like a split second, the right hand didn't know what the left hand was doing before they decided this all should be at the same continuity. So the Thrawn trilogy happened first. Dark Empire happens, I think, I had the source book, the West End Games source book last time, but I think it's like 5 years or so, or 10, 5 years or 3 years or something after the Thrawn trilogy events is Dark Empire, and it's right before the Jedi Academy trilogy. If you're looking at the grand scheme of things, continuity. Let's see. Oh, it's not as many comments as I thought.
They were entranced by our discussion.
Yeah. Andre said, doesn't Boba Fett have a new ship called the Slave 2? Did they mention his ship in this one? I don't think they talk about his ship name in this one. Did I just miss it?
I don't know.
His ship should always be called Slave something. That's for sure. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. I have to go through kind of carefully and find that. 4 of those ships Boba Fett had, Elf Runner says. I still haven't read all of the Boba Fett books and the Bounty Hunter Chronicles and stuff like that yet. I've got them, but I still need to get through them. I guess that's about it. Elf Runner says, I do like how other writers are able to supplement the story in Dark Empire. For example, Palpatine's cloning operation was fleshed out with the whole Starkiller project. Exactly, yeah. That's what I find it's one of the things I find so fascinating about the EU, is that you've got all these different authors, and even, heck, different companies to a certain degree, West End, Bantam, all these Dark Horse, but they're comprised of people working on this franchise who truly love the franchise. So even when you have somebody who writes, kind of I think it's safe to say in a lot of ways, a short-sighted story in something like Dark Empire, you've got people who are going to swarm around it and fix it, not like rewrite the story per se, but like, make the continuity come around and make it work, and that was great. Those Starkiller games are wonderful. Yeah, it's a good point. All right. Well, again, I know it was a very, very short stream tonight, but I've got another stream set up to go in like 8 minutes. So I got to get off here and go use the bathroom before that.
And I have one too at 10 o'clock. Well, I'm co-hosting. I'm not.
Yeah.
But yeah, watching The Cube.
All right, guys. Well, thank you for joining us tonight. I just wanted to get this in. We are going to come back next Friday as planned, if Alyssa's not sick. Well, she shouldn't be, and we'll do part 3. So the link to the radio drama for part 3 is in the description below. You can pick up the graphic novels, comic, whatever, if you can as well, and we'll finish out the series next week. Any last thoughts from you, Al?
Oh no, just thank everybody for being here and just having a good time. Glad we're doing these again.
Yeah,
it's a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Well, guys, I will see you over in my other stream that's already posted in just a few minutes. So catch you soon.
Bye.